Hey kids, it's Mr. Fly here, hope you're well, and welcome back to another edition of Bike News. Slightly late, apologies about that. This time we're looking at what's been going on in the world of motorcycles here in the UK for April 2023. So if you're interested in that, stick around and stay tuned. Alrighty, so welcome back to Bike News. Apologies, it's a little bit later than planned. I was away doing some stuff with my friends at Canary Motorcycle Tours, came back, promptly caught COVID, and it completely knocked me out for a week, so wasn't in any mood to be filming stuff to the camera for Bike News, so sorry about that, but we're back now, normal service resumed, I hope, next month. But anyway, for now, we've got 4 papers that cover everything that's been going on in April in the world of motorcycles. Without further ado, let's crack on with it. Right, first story here, Scottish cops on the alert. This is just something I thought it was worth talking about because summer is here at last, or well, technically it's here, although the weather doesn't seem to be playing ball so far, does it? But it is getting warmer, we are getting out on our bikes, I'm glad to say. Many people start to look towards Scotland for their tour. Great idea, riding in Scotland is absolutely fantastic, but the cops are on the lookout in Scotland. So just a little warning here. Scottish police are attempting to eliminate deaths on the country's roads by urging motorcyclists to ride legally and sensibly or facing enforcement action this summer. Well, you can't argue against riding legally and sensibly, can you? It says here, on a number of key routes, particularly at the weekends, you'll see marked police cars, marked police motorcycles, unmarked police cars, and this year, unmarked motorcycles as well. On top of patrols, Police Scotland will be offering their one-day Rider Refinement North programme, apparently, and this is something that gives riders a practical lesson on road safety. So if you fancy doing one of those kind of bike safe type days, you can do that with the Scottish Police as well. But just a little warning, if you are going up in Scotland, just ride sensibly. The cops are on the lookout. I mean, ride sensibly wherever you're going, but particularly there's some campaigns on this summer, as there often is in police forces, looking out for bikers going a bit nuts in the sunshine. All right, next up. Well, free frame for all new bike. Now, I love a bit of new tech, me, and this is a great example of something that's a little bit different. It's a bike that has a weld-free frame. Let me just read you what it says here. A new model of electric motorcycle will be launched in the UK. It features a moulded alloy frame completely devoid of welds. Caofen, a newly developed brand from Chongqing Huanghui motorcycle company, so I'm guessing this might be Chinese, I don't know, will release the F80 in 2 guises, a road legal adventure and an off-road dedicated iteration, and that's coming to the UK in April, so apparently they're here already. It keeps the weight low, and the bike comes in at 81 kilograms for the off-road version and 85 kilograms for the road bike. Now, I have to say, number one, I'm not a fan of electric bikes particularly, and I'm also not a huge fan of Chinese motorcycles. So for a start off, you're on a bit of a downer. But when you look at this, it looks lovely. I mean, it looks really neat. It looks, I mean, okay, you'd have to see one in the flesh to know whether it was any good or not. But off-roading electric bikes kind of make sense, don't they? Anyway, it says here, charging is claimed at just 3 hours from empty for the adventure model and 2 hours for the off-road version, and powers an 8,000 watt motor to 93 miles for the adventure, 62 miles for the off-roader. Now, I don't think an 8,000 watt motor is very big, actually, in terms of motorcycling terms. It's big for an electric bike, as in push bike, an electric one, but it's not, you know, it's not a particularly pokey motorcycle, put it that way. The Caofen F80 Adventure retails at 5,940 and the off-road machine is 5,495. So relatively expensive, I guess, when you think you can buy things like, you know, the Royal Enfield Hunter that I've just been riding. That's less than that, and there are other bikes too around that price margin. But again, if you're into your off-road, you want a light bike and you want to go electric to keep it nice and friendly for other people that are using the trails, then this could be an option. Interested to see what you think on that one. I think it looks cool, but again, does the Chinese factor, does the electric factor put you off? Don't know. Interested to hear your comments in the comments below. All right, next. A proper grand tour. Which of these 2 sporty GTs hits the mark for big mile fun? Now here, MCN are pitching the Yamaha Tracer 9 GT, which I loved, except for the strange little twin display thing on it, against the Suzuki GSX-S1000 GT, which I love to ride, but I didn't much like the looks of. It's okay, it's just got a bit too long a nose for me. So out of these 2, without looking at what the verdict is, and I can't remember what MCN said, tricky. I would probably go for the Suzuki personally, because it's just got that lovely 4-cylinder smoothness, and you're not looking at the bike when you're riding it, are you? It just, to me, is more of a classic Grand Tourer. But anyway, let's see what MCN said. Right, verdict here from John Urry. Voyage of Discovery. I rate the Tracer, but it's a bit cute and feels like a roadster made into a Tourer. is a very different prospect to the Suzuki. The Suzuki is a bit old school, that's what I like about it. Almost a flat bar GSX-1000 with a bigger fairing. I like the Suzuki's engine, sure-footed handling and high comfort levels, but the Tracer's specs makes it very tempting. Overall, I'd lean more towards the Suzuki, mainly because the Tracer's split dash would do my head in. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. That's the main reason why I'd go against the Tracer as well. Although, since these papers came out, I see that Yamaha have brought out a new version of the Tracer. I think it's called the GT Plus. I think we might be talking about it in a later paper. If not, it'll be in next month's Bike News, where they've actually gone to a more traditional, if there's such a thing, TFT rather than the split screen, and that completely transforms the way the bike looks, I think, from a rider's perspective. So that might swing it. They've been given both bikes 4 out of 5, interestingly, so they haven't split it in that sense. But I personally would go for the Suzuki, which is actually cheaper as well for what feels like a much more substantial bike. The Suzuki, $12,655 versus the Tracer, $13,100. Which of those two would you have? Be interested to see. Right, fighting talk from Bologna, one of my favourite bikes here. This is an absolutely cracking machine, the Streetfighter V4 from Ducati. When I borrowed one of these a year or so ago, I absolutely fell in love with it. Didn't like the looks of it originally, but once I'd ridden it, I completely changed my mind about it. Completely hypocritical. I now love it, and it's possibly my favourite roadster out there. So MCN have been having a look at the latest incarnation of this. It's had a few updates. It says here, Ducati's Streetfighter V4 has established itself as one of the most extreme and track-focused of all the super nakeds. Which it is. What I loved about it is not only is it extreme and super focused, but you can also ride it, like I do, in a bit of a namby-pamby old man way, and it's perfectly good. You can ride it slowly around the lanes, and it's fine. You might argue it's a bit wasted for that, but you know, it can do both. Anyway, I digress. The focus for 2023 is to make it easier to ride with a sack full of electronic upgrades and a few nips and tucks elsewhere. So Ducati's 205 brake horsepower Desmo Sedici Stradale is untouched for 2023, but it has got new engine mapping, which has smoothed off its jagged edges. It's interesting that, isn't it? When they do these new engine maps, you wonder why, when the bike initially comes out, why didn't they have an engine map then that smoothed off jagged edges? Didn't they test it? I always find it a bit strange that they can just put a new engine map on later iterations of bikes and suddenly they become a much better bike than when they were launched. Why didn't they think of that in the first place? I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it. To reduce squat under throttle, the swing arm has been raised by 4mm, so apparently the handling's a bit sharper. It's got even fancier electronics. It says here, Streetfighter V4 gets the same updated rider aids as the latest generation Panigale V4, which were, you know, that bike got rave reviews for its electronics. A new look, sort of, it says here. The Streetfighter's new fuel tank is reshaped with smoother top edges and is wider at the bottom to help your legs grip on it and under hard braking. Tank capacity goes up to 17 litres. Bike has a flatter seat, new tank side panels, matte black radiator cover and footrest hangers, and comes with a single seat as standard with a pillion seat and pegs supplied in a box. Rightly so. I don't think anybody wants to be a pillion on the back of one of these, do they? I certainly wouldn't be. So it has had a few cosmetic changes. Just glancing at it here, I can't really tell what they are. Maybe you can see the fuel tank slightly reshaped. I must say, I do like the look of this in the grey. Normally I'm a big fan of Ducatis in red, of course, but in grey it looks superb. I think that one of those grey ones with gold wheels would be absolutely perfect. Really, really love the V4. Well over the top for a rider like me, but I do absolutely love it. And in my dream garage, that would definitely have a space. That's a video I must make, by the way. I keep promising I'll make a video about my dream garage. I haven't got around to it yet, but it'll come. Right, moving one extreme to the other, moving from the incredible Ducati V4 now to a scooter. It's the new Kymco AK550, a sort of top spec maxi scooter. Now, just glancing at it, it looks to me just like the TMax, the Yamaha that I rode a while ago, which I really loved. I'm a big fan of scooters. If you just want practical urban transport, very, very difficult to beat a scooter. And in the case of these big maxi scooters as well, you can tour on them as well. So they're more than just an urban device. Anyway, this is the Kymco AK550. It says here, Taiwanese motorcycle manufacturer Kymco have been making two-wheel products since 1978. So they know what they're doing. It's now joined by a high-spec variant for 2023, but what extras does the £10,527 AK550 Premium offer commuters? Wow, it's quite an expensive bike. Alongside an extra pedal disc and radial Brembo caliper at the front, the premium model comes with an advanced intelligent braking system. This is lean angle sensitive ABS, I think. Unlike the basic AK550, which costs $10,027, so this is an extra 500 quid basically. The premium model comes with an electronically adjustable screen as standard, alongside cruise control, 3-stage heated grips, a larger fairing, and more spacious and comfortable seat, which sounds like good value for 500 quid, doesn't it? It's got a lockable front storage compartment compartment housing a USB charger for your phone. Keyless ignition has been improved with a new one-touch start, and there's a series of piano-style switches to operate the scooter's functions. At the top of the Maxi-scooter price ladder is the Yamaha TMax Tech Max, which costs $13,800, which is seen as the main competition for this. So the TMax that I rode, what's that? 4 grand more? 3 grand more? 3.5 grand more. So yeah, big difference in pricing, but I don't know. Kymco seem to have a reasonably good reputation, don't they? But let's face it, they don't still have the reputation of Yamaha, do they? You know, would you save 3 grand to get the Kymco over the Yamaha? Don't know, I'm not sure. These are expensive, these maxi scooters. I remember when I did the T-Max review, lots of people commented, for that sort of money you can get a proper bike, which you can, but you're kind of missing the point, I think, when you say proper bike. These are built for different purposes. These aren't for enthusiast motorcyclists that ride their bikes at weekends like you and I probably do. These are for practical means of transport, for people that would rather these than a car, because you can nip through traffic or whatever, or because it's two-wheel fun. So to say that, you know, you can spend that sort of money and get a really nice motorcycle, yes you can, but it's a completely different use case. So you know, I defend scooters in that sense. All right, that was it for the first paper. Swiftly moving on. What surprises we got here? It's been a while since I've been through these, so some of this is a little bit of a surprise. Oh, London bikers hit by charges. Now, this is something we've talked about before on Bike News. This is this tendency for London boroughs to start charging people for parking their bikes. Islington Council in London are following in the footsteps of nearby Hackney by introducing parking charges for motorcycles and scooters within the borough. I hate this. It came as a shock to regular commuter Paoli Puccinelli. He said, "I returned from a break and was back to work on March the 1st and was surprised to find a PCN penalty charge notice sellotaped to my mirror. In my absence, Islington had put up signs with the Ringo number to pay £1 to pay for parking for the day. He was ordered to pay £80 or £40 if paid within 14 days, and he described that as outrageous and disproportionate." So the poor devil went away on leave from work, came back a week later, parked in the usual spot, didn't pay his £1 via Ringo. Those apps are a right pain, aren't they, to do? I suppose they're all right once you get them set up, actually, but there you go, that's just me. And yeah, got a flipping penalty fine for 40 quid, outrageous, when it would have just cost him £1 for the day anyway. Just a nuisance. I don't know why London boroughs do this. Let's face it, motorcycles are part of the solution, not the problem. Let's encourage people to get on their bikes and park them in London. Let's not start doing these silly punitive fines to stop people actually taking them in. Real shame that. I hope others don't follow suit, but I bet they do. Right, a bit more tech. Lift the lid on braking. New Shark has built-in brake light, but it won't break the bank to buy. So this is a helmet from Shark, which has a built-in brake light. Okay, I think we understand that. Shark have released a full-face helmet with some ingenious technology, an automatic integrated brake light system that requires no wiring or fancy pairing compatibility. I like the idea of no wiring and no pairing. What I don't like is, presumably, you still have to charge the battery, so it's going to be yet another battery to charge. That immediately would stop me from getting this. That, and the fact that obviously it's in the Shark helmet. I've got nothing against Shark helmets at all. In fact, I own one, but in fact I own a couple. But, you know, is that the helmet that's right for you? Does it fit right? Does it look right? You know, has it got the right protective qualities? Just because it's got the rear brake light, I'm not sure that would make me buy it. But I suppose it's another thing. If you're looking at helmets in general, it might sway you in favour of the Shark. I don't know. Anyway, let's read a bit more about the technology. The system does not require Bluetooth connectivity to an app or direct wiring to the bike. Instead, it detects braking forces via a triaxial accelerometer. What has resulted in a smart brake system which will flash the brake light 3 times a second under steady braking and 5 times per second under hard braking. Quite like that idea. So it does get drivers' attention because it flashes. Power is supplied via an internal battery charge via a USB with 3 hours of charge, offering 12 hours use. Well, that's something I'd definitely forget to do. I don't even remember to charge up the intercom on my helmet, so there's no chance of me remembering to charge up the brake light on it. Intriguing idea. I'm not that excited about it. How about you? Difficult to argue against safety, of course, and I do like to see new technology coming. If everybody was doing it, great. Just not sure I'd remember to charge it up, that's the problem. Can't really get around that. There's no answer to that, is there? Maybe a little solar panel on the top or something. Right, next up here, while talking about scooters as we were just now, they've now, in this edition, MCN have done a test of the Kymco AK550 Premium we were just talking about against the Sym Maxsym TL 508 and the Yamaha TMax Tech Max, which is the bike I know, having ridden that a few months back. So the Kymco 10527, the Sym 9449, the Yamaha, a whopping 13,800, so way more expensive. They all superficially look kind of the same. Let's see what the verdict is here. Time to sell the car, says John Harry. Let's not be too hasty, eh? I enjoyed riding all three, but the clear winner is the TMax. It's the most expensive, but also the best, and I would consider owning one instead of a second car. It does everything that something like a sports tourer does, yet with added practicality and comfort. Although very temptingly priced, my worry with the Sym, and to a lesser degree the Kymco, is the backup. That would be my concern as well. I don't know where my closest dealer is. While I'd happily take the TMax touring in Europe, as I know if I get any issues, I will be able to locate a Yamaha dealer. Yes, very true. They all superficially look the same. They've given the Kymco 4 out of 5, TMax 5 out of 5, and the Sym 3 out of 5. That's the way they kind of split them up. Yeah, I guess on balance I would probably take the financial hit and go for the Yamaha as well, for much the same reasons actually as John, I think, just that you know and trust Yamaha. Nothing against Kymco, but again, I don't know where my local dealer is. I don't think I've ever seen one. I don't know where I'll buy a Kymco even, but interesting. All right. Game changer. It's new, but is it worth it? New Multistrada V4 Rally boasts next level electronics and user-friendly performance. Now, adventure bikes, as we know, super popular category of motorcycles, and the Multistrada has always been the adventure bike, hasn't it, for those guys moving up from sports bikes, still want a little bit of naughty pace, but want the comfort and general ability of an adventure bike. And the Multistrada for me has always been up there with the GS as one, in the top 2 of adventure bikes. When I come to buy a new adventure bike, if and when I come to buy one, it's between the GS and Multistrada. It's always been like that ever since I can remember, and that remains the case. Well, I would say, looking at this new version though, the latest version of the Multistrada, number one, again, a Ducati really has to be red, and then the grey for me doesn't quite work, I don't think, on the Multi. And over the years it's started to get a bit more rugged looking. I'm not saying it's ugly by any means, it's a nice looking bike, but I used to like the sort of flowing lines that the older Multistradas of 5-6 years ago had. They still maintain that sort of Ducati premium look, didn't they? That exoticness. Now they're just morphing towards GS territory, I think, in that they look rugged and fit for purpose, and I like that, but they no longer for me have that sort of Ducati specialness that even Multistrada used to have. Anyway, that's just me, personal opinion. Let's see what it says here. A glance at the specs reveals the headline changes to spoke wheels and a 30-litre tank. But dig a little deeper into detail and the changes are extensive. There's a revised camshaft timing and new exhaust and cylinder deactivation. That's that clever thing where when you're at idle or when you're not under loads of load, instead of it being a V4, it effectively becomes a twin and it cuts 2 of the cylinders off. Very interesting. It says here, and I think this is a typo, for a 240 kilogram bike wet without fuel, it drops into corners and changes direction with an incredible level of feel and accuracy. I can't believe a Multistrada is 240 kilograms wet without fuel. I thought wet meant with fuel, so I'm not too sure. I'm prepared to believe it's 240 kilograms. Sounds about right for an adventure bike, doesn't it? But I don't know if that's with or without fuel based on what they've said here. Very strange. Anyway, just a typo, I guess. This is the downside of the Multi. The starting point of 23,590 for the base model. No one ever buys the base model of these sorts of bikes, and it goes up to 26,943, so 27 grand for the bike that MCN tested. It is undeniably expensive, yeah, so knocking on the door of 30 grand if you want one of these. A lot of money for an adventure bike. I suppose you could argue the BMW is not far behind if you went for a GSA, spec'd it up. You're probably still closer to 25 than 30, I would have thought, but yeah, expensive game. We're going to be talking about another article in a minute about the real price of bikes and are they expensive compared to what they used to be, because everyone always moans about the price of bikes, don't they? Including me. Right, going around the bend, funky looking new Indian Sport Chief is a cruiser that thinks it's a sports bike. Now this is an interesting one. Don't know if you saw this. This kind of went under the radar a little bit. I never thought of myself as a cruiser person, but the more I ride, the more I like them. And having now ridden a few Indians and a few Harleys, I have to say, for me, the Indians always trump the Harleys. Sorry, Harley fans out there. I get Harleys. I understand why people like them. But the Indians just always seem that little bit more refined to me, a little bit more high-tech, and feel a bit more, well, not upmarket, that's not right, because Harleys definitely are an upmarket bike as well. But the Indians, for me, I love, is all I'm saying. But in this particular case, I'm not sure I do. The more I look at this picture, the more it sort of grows on me, but the idea of having a cruiser with a sport bike-like fairing just grates with me a bit. So it says here, India's new 19,995 Sport Chief is a slice of American pie with an unlikely appetite for corners. And all the reviews I've seen on this, I've seen a few YouTube videos, people say that it really does handle. I don't know, why you wouldn't buy a bike like this if you want to be chucking it around the corners, surely. Just doesn't seem quite right. Anyway, what does Michael Neves, my favourite MCN road tester, say? He says, it's well built, classy, has a fantastic dash and works exactly as intended. Steering is accurate, brakes are strong, and there's plenty of grip. Never thought I'd heard that about an Indian cruiser. It also has an odd hybrid riding position that's neither sporty nor comfortable over distance. Is it worth 20 grand? That kind of money will buy you a top spec adventure sports, naked or touring bike. So the answer must be no. Well, there we go. If Nevesy says it, it must be right, and I tend to agree. It's sort of, it's growing on me, the looks, but I don't get it. It's not. It's an odd mix of bikes, isn't it? That doesn't quite sit right with me. Interested to hear what you make of the Indian Sport Chief. Right, next paper. Okay, five more stories I think on this paper. Plug before you play. Yeah, this is just a little thing came up. Campaign urges people to protect their hearing on the move. I was surprised. I recently went on a tour with a few pals, and a couple of people in the group weren't wearing earplugs. And I sort of thought everybody wore earplugs these days. I never ride without earplugs unless it's a very short run to the hops on, say, the hops to the shops on the Mrs. 125, say, and then I may not. And that's just me being lazy. I, generally speaking, would always wear them. Once you damage your hearing, those cells that you damage don't come back again, unlike some parts of the body. When you damage your hearing, you lose it forever. And even having worn earplugs pretty much, I'd say 99.9% of the time I've been riding for the last 12 years, I've still definitely noticed a loss of hearing over those years. My hearing is not as sharp as it used to be, and I just put that down to riding motorcycles. Flying aeroplanes, it's pretty noisy in a light aircraft cockpit as well, so that may not be helping either, but I'm wearing ear defenders there. But anyway, all I would say is wear earplugs if you possibly can stand it. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I wear the little plastic Christmas tree ones. I find those work most over a long period of time, but if I'm touring, I'll take some squidgy ones, I'll take some custom fit guards as well, and I'll kind of mix and match between them all. Even the custom ones I find don't last a whole day of comfortable wearing, but if you swap between different types through the day, you can get away with it. I'd definitely rather be wearing them than not. Anyway, let me lecture over. Let me read what it says here. The UK's only tinnitus-specific charity is calling on more riders to get into the habit of using earplugs to prevent permanent damage. But if you're out on your bike regularly, damage can build up and it can't be undone. This is what I was saying. You can lose some of your hearing, and that can affect all aspects of your life. Road noise and wind turbulence are generally around 85 to 95 dB at speeds up to 35 miles an hour, climbing to 116 decibels at 65. At these upper levels, hearing damage can occur in less than a minute. So if you're riding at 65 miles an hour for a minute, you will damage your hearing if you're not wearing earplugs. Absolutely, if you can, wear them. Particularly if you're a new rider and haven't thought about this, get yourself into the habit of wearing earplugs from day one. Right, lecture over. Next up. Standing on its own two wheels, yet more tech, and again, is this a step too far? This is Yamaha this time. Yamaha says self-balancing bikes will help minimise accidents. Last year, Yamaha pledged to eliminate motorcycle accidents. A major part of this, which is quite a claim, somebody's at the door, stand by. Sorry about that. Right, we're back. Yes, so this here, last year, Yamaha pledged to eliminate motorcycle accidents. Quite a claim. And one of the ways that they're going to do that is by developing self-balancing systems to increase stability at low speeds. And now the firm has showcased a prototype, apparently. The Advanced Motorcycle Stabilisation Assist System uses 6-axis inertial measurement unit working in tandem with 2 actuators, one providing small inputs to drive the front wheel. Wow, and the other making minute adjustments to the steering. I'm not sure about this. Yamaha systems aim to eliminate 5% of accidents caused by low-speed riding errors. Okay, so basically this kicks in when you're at low speed and it just helps you balance the bike. Not sure about this. Now, I've had some cars in the past that have some various driver assist things, like lane assist. If you nod off, it brings you back into the lane, or if you don't brake in time, it automatically applies the brakes, that sort of thing. Now, it's very hard to argue against safety, isn't it, and safety features on all vehicles, but there's something about when cars or bikes intervene and actually take control that just doesn't sit well with me. I mean, different if you're on an entirely autonomously controlled vehicle, 20 years down the line, maybe we'll all be in Teslas that drive themselves, and I'm quite happy with that if they're all doing it. But a motorcycle, doing its own thing. Again, doesn't work for me. Maybe I'm just a Luddite, and as I say, hard to argue against safety, but you know, I want to be riding that bike. I don't want it to be kicking in when it thinks I'm doing something wrong. Fascinated to hear your views on this one. I think it's going to be a long way off, let's face it, and looking at the picture here of all the gubbins that has to be attached to the bike, I'm sure it will be minimised in a productionised version. But yeah, there's something about that, maybe a step too far, don't know. Anyway, if we're all riding electric bikes and they do, well, that's the end of riding as far as I'm concerned if it goes down that route. Sportier Husky twin incoming. I'm being a bit miserable today. It says here there's a new Husqvarna coming out, and the little note I've written on the sticky here is I've never much liked the looks of these. Would you buy this one? So let me just read what it says here. Husqvarna looks set to reintroduce a large capacity Vitpilen, with spy shots showing a sporty offering that's based around KTM's 890 Duke. So I borrowed the Vitpilen a while back. I can't remember what size the engine was. I'm thinking it's like it was quite small, 400 or something like that. But ignoring the size of the engine, I just didn't much like the design of the bike. And this new version with the bigger engine looks exactly the same. It's still got that funky tank. It just doesn't work for me. I don't know what it is about Husqvarnas and KTMs that there's just something about them that doesn't appeal to me. It's not just me, or maybe it is just me. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. What do you think about KTMs? I've got nothing against them. They're fantastic bikes. I know if you're an off-road fan, supermotos, that sort of thing, they're brilliant. But other than the Super Duke R and the 125 Duke, no, the 390, sorry, there are very few that appeal. Anyway, let's carry on here. I'm going down a bit of a rat hole, aren't I? I can tell. Despite alterations to the frame and engine, the styling looks similar to the 701 single that came before it, with sweeping minimalist bodywork that looks typically Husqvarna, plus a large round headlight, small pillion perch, thin LED rear light strip, all reminiscent of the old bike. Its contemporary competition, which will likely include the Ducati Monster, Yamaha MT-09, Triumph Street Triple R, and of course the 890 Duke. So this bike up against the likes of the new Triumph Street Triple R, well, there's no competition, is there? The Triumph is just such a nicer looking bike. And for me, sadly, a lot of buying decisions, and this is where I'm very shallow indeed, are based on how the bike looks, and I'm afraid it's already on an uphill battle in the case of the Vitpilen. Interested again to hear if you think I'm way wide of the mark, or whether you're a big fan of the way the Vitpilen looks. Entirely a personal opinion, so there are going to be people that absolutely love it, but I'm wondering if on balance there's more that love or don't. Anyway, next up, Muscular Misfits, the new Ducati Diavel V4, the supercharged Kawasaki Z H2, and Triumph's delightfully absurd Rocket 3 Go on a Street Ball. Now these are these are fantastic looking motorcycles, aren't they? I love these. I haven't ridden the Kawasaki, but I have ridden the Rocket 3 and the Diavel. Not the V4 version, I have to say. I was going to have a Diavel V4 this very week here on loan in the garage, but unfortunately Ducati's PR people made a bit of a cock up, even though they said they were going to loan me one for a couple of weeks months ago in these dates. They ended up lending it to somebody else. So anyway, let's not worry about that for now. At some point I'll get my hand on a V4. It won't be now until way later in the year, unfortunately, but it's a bit of a shame I've missed out on that. I was looking forward to riding that, the new version. But anyway, a lovely looking bike. Let's see what it says here. The world is gradually embracing non-conformity. I'm all for that. Fitting in, doing as you're told, behaving as expected by beige people. Who wants that? Not us. Freedom is allowing people to live the lives they want and ride the bikes that suit them. Hear, hear. Sounds good to me. So what's the verdict that they've come up with? Just before I turn to the verdict, which would I have out of these, having not ridden the V4? Difficult. I'm a big fan of Triumphs, but then I'm a big fan of Ducatis as well. It would be between those two. The Kawasaki for me doesn't just do it on the looks front, although I get it's a performant bruising bike. The Rocket, I do love the looks of it, but only from the one side. And when I borrowed one, it was really, really heavy to move around. I don't think I could live with it. I think it would be too hard to live with. So without having ridden it, I think on balance, I'd go for the Ducati, which also is the most expensive at 23.5 grand versus 22 grand for the Rocket. Anyway, to the verdict. What do MCNs say? The appeal is personal. Well, true, it's all about, what you like the look of, isn't it? Motorcycling for pleasure is about entertainment, value and rider satisfaction. I expected Rocket 3 owner Keith to appreciate the modernised version of his bike, but it was the Kawasaki that most appealed to his eclectic taste. Interesting. Bruce, on the other hand, these are the people that rode them. Bruce, on the other hand, didn't trust himself to behave on the rude Kawasaki and felt the Diavel was better for having fun without going daft. The Rocket is my favourite, says Chris Newbigging. I found it the most engaging, the best when ridden sedately, but entertaining with a motor that suits sub-ton life more than any bike here. Our split verdict is indicative of the very personal appeal these bikes have. Yeah, and that's exactly it. These are just entirely fun bikes, aren't they? Whatever floats your boat is the one to go for. On looks alone, I'd definitely go for the Rocket, but practicality, the Ducati, I think. And to be fair, this new version with the 4 pipes and everything else, the Diavel does look beautiful. It's got that beautiful wheel. It is a work of art. If it's not so heavy to move around in and out of the garage and stuff, then that's probably the one to go for me. Looking forward to riding that later in the year if I can. Enjoy it, Chopsy, while you've got it. Right, did I sound bitter then? I hope not. I am though. Right, moving on. The new Suzuki GSX-8S belies its modest specs and could be a smarter buy than Honda's Hornet, it says here. The team of engineers behind the GSX-8S lack a little of the self-assured confidence development teams usually portray when presenting a new bike. This was because on the launch, the new Hornet had just come out apparently, and it had taken the wind out of the sails a little bit because the Hornet was getting so many good plaudits. But I have to say the new GSX-8S seems to be getting some good reviews as well. Not a bike I've got in the diary yet to ride, but Suzuki are very good to me, and I'm sure I'll be able to get hold of one when I get a slot in the old Aha, sorry about that. Camera overheated and shut down when I was kind of mid-flow there. Serves me right for being so lazy as to not set up my cooling fan this time. Anyway, I'll put a new battery in. I've let the camera stand for a little bit. It's cooled down. Hopefully we can get away with it, as we've only got one more paper to go. Anyway, where was I? The GSX-8S. Yes, so what I was kind of saying was that Suzuki were caught out a little bit maybe by the Hornet launch. So it says here, Honda's new Hornet has clearly been an unpleasant surprise, and their pride in a job well done is tinged with nervous anticipation of how it measures up to a bike with a knockout performance and incredible value beyond their reference to the market. So yeah, basically it's MCN are implying here that Suzuki slightly spooked by the launch of the Honda Hornet, but we shall see. I think the Suzuki looks good from the side, not so sure from the front. Don't like that headlight on it. I don't know why motorcycle manufacturers think that these stacked headlights looks good. I don't know many people that think they do. I know they're trying to make them look modern, but no, for me it just doesn't work. Interested in your views on what you think the GSX-8S looks like. I'm sure it rides great. Looking forward very much to riding one. So yeah, must get hold of Suzuki and get one of those in the diary, because I think that's going to be a very popular bike, as will be the Hornet, which was also excellent. The verdict that MCN came up with on the GSX-8S, this is Chris Newbigging writing. He says, Suzuki's considered approach has resulted in a machine where the numbers on the spec sheet don't matter. The GSX-8S, it's a bit of a tongue twister that, isn't it, is friendly from the get-go, talky and engaging at realistic road speeds. It's proven a pleasant surprise, far from a misjudged also run. It could well be the best in class. So yeah, looking forward to riding that. That's my type of bike actually. At the end of the day, specs don't matter, do they? It's how bikes make you feel. If it's good enough on the road, then that's good enough for me. And yeah, look forward to riding that. Just a bit of a shame about the styling. Maybe it'll grow on me a bit like the Ducati Streetfighter did, don't know. Right, last paper before we get on to parish notices. First story in here. The true cost of biking. Yeah, this is the thing I alluded to earlier about, are bikes really as expensive as we all make out? Because if you actually look at the cost of bikes from the past and compare them to bikes today, you'll see that actually prices in real terms have kind of kept the same or gone down, or at least that's what MCN says. So it says here, it's a common complaint that motorbikes have got too expensive. Yeah, and I'm always complaining about that. But it's not just motorbikes that have got more pricey over time. Everything has, thanks to soaring rates of inflation. Let's start with the 1993 Ducati Monster with a launch price of £7,500. If you key 7,500 into our inflation calculator, it spits out a modern equivalent of 14,943. Yes, you've read that. For the equivalent cost of an M900 Monster in today's money, you could buy the latest 2023 SP version and have enough change left over to buy a full set of bike kit. So that's interesting. So the Monster, for example, in real terms is cheaper today, they're saying. Let's take a look at the latest Honda CB750 Hornet and compare it with the CB600F of 1998. A new Hornet back then would set you back $5,245. In today's money, 5,245 becomes 9,425. That's £2,000 less expensive than it ought to be compared to today's prices. So it's interesting. They picked out a couple of examples here, and there are more. The article's quite detailed about how, in real terms, bike prices have not gone up at all, and if anything they've gone down a bit, they're saying. Of course that assumes, I think, that your wages keep up with inflation, and I don't think that is the case. So I'm not entirely sure the article is totally correct, but at the same time, clearly inflation has a part to a role to play here in the thoughts. And of course, although things sound expensive from a headline point of view, they may not actually be compared to everything else. Anyway, interested again to hear what you think about that, whether you're thinking that bikes now are too expensive. Maybe it's just that we've got a more range of bikes, so you can go, there's a lot of exotic, very expensive bikes out there, aren't there? Like, for example, that Multistrada we saw just now, what is it, 25 grand, something like that, knocking on the door of 30 grand. That seems like a lot of money for a motorcycle, doesn't it? The interesting comparison, I guess, would be how motorcycles have increased compared to cars, because it feels to me that small cars these days are very cheap. You can buy a second-hand motorcycle, a good second-hand bike. I think you've got a bargain if you've got something for like 4 grand, but you can actually buy a second-hand small car for that, which is possibly a more interesting comparison. Again, I know they're not the same thing, you're not comparing like with like, and for us motorcycle enthusiasts, then, well, a small car hasn't got the same appeal as a bike, of course. So anyway, it's an interesting thought, isn't it? Right, smart motorway plans are scrapped. Hurrah for that. Now, do you remember smart motorways? These were the things where, occasionally the hard shoulder could be used as an all-lane motorway. Basically gives you a bit more capacity in times of busy traffic. But basically, it was shown that these actually aren't particularly safe. There's been a few accidents where people have been injured or killed on the hard shoulder waiting for help. Anyway, plans to roll out more smart motorways where all the lanes are in use and there is no hard shoulder have been canned amid fears that they cause accidents if vehicles break down and become stranded. Around 10% of the UK motorway network is made up of smart motorways in the UK. However, the lack of a hard shoulder has led to fatal collisions. RAC road safety spokesman Simon Williams said this is a watershed announcement and a victory for everyone who has campaigned against these motorways. Existing stretches will remain but be subjected to a 900 million safety refit. What a great idea, including 150 extra emergency refuges by 2025. So they're going to scrap the idea and they're going to have to pay nearly another £1 billion to do a safety retrofit on them. Whoever came up with the idea of these smart motorways in the first place, not a good move. What a tremendous waste of time and money that has been. But glad to see the back of them. All right. When is less more? Do you really need a full-on super naked when the premium middleweight class has so much to offer? And I can answer that now. No, you don't. Although I like the likes of the Ducati Streetfighter V4, the KTM Super Duke R and so on. They are incredible machines. Some of these medium weight bikes now are amazing. The new Triumph Street Triple, I cannot wait to ride. That looks awesome. The new Ducati Monster, I cannot wait to ride that in its latest SP form as well. Another one I would have been riding this week if it hadn't been for a little bit of a cock-up. Anyway, I digress. So more often than not, buying a bike is a decision made with the heart rather than the head. Absolutely, I'd say 100% of the time in my case. Bigger is generally viewed as better, but that's not always the case. This seems to be, often is the case actually, isn't it, that bigger isn't necessarily better, particularly when you're talking about riding on the road, because horsepowers are getting so huge now. If you buy one of these 200 horsepower bikes, you cannot get anything out of them on the road. You've got to be on a track, and if like me you like riding on the road, it's definitely, you're better off getting something with a bit less power. Anyway, John Urry says here, when you look at the performance they deliver, you're left questioning if there is any need to step up a rung to buy the bigger capacity siblings. I could not agree more. As fun as the KTM and Yamaha are to ride, they still have a slight element of aggression that makes them more demanding than the Triumph or Ducati, which would have been my two picks, by the way, the Triumph and Ducati. You can have just as much entertainment on the Triple or Monster and never suffer the downsides when wanting to take it easy, which is why the Ducati and Triumph emerge as our top picks. They gave them both 5 stars. You would be more than happy to have any of these middleweight slash premium middleweight slash semi super nakeds, whatever we call them, in your garage, as they're all brilliant, whatever they're called. But the Triumph is our pick of the crop, which is interesting. I've always been a huge fan of the Triumph Street Triple R, having owned one for, I don't know, 9 years, something like that. Only relatively recently sold it. Wish I hadn't. Wish I had the room to keep it. But it's very much a bike that is on my radar. Potentially, we could be seeing another Triumph Street Triple R in my garage in the not too distant future. I cannot wait to ride them. I've got them coming soon from Triumph to have a go on. Looking forward to comparing the R against the RS to see which one I prefer. Okay, next up. twin gets set to scramble. This is the new Honda CL500, a bike that's a lot of interest around this motorcycle. It's not a bike that really lights my fire. There's something about this, the fuel tank sitting on top of the frame, that doesn't do it for me. Again, I'm just hit by looks, but there's no doubt it's had some good reviews, and I'm sure it's going to fly off the shelves based on everything I've seen. It says here the CL500 is the 5th model in Honda's range to be powered by their rev-happy, dependable 471cc parallel twin. Arriving in dealers in 2023, doesn't say when, with a tempting price of just $5,999, a bargain. It goes up against the likes of Royal Enfield's Scram 411, featuring styling inspired by the Honda CLs of the 1960s and 70s. Now, when you put it like that, at that price point, that is a bargain, isn't it? Let's face it, Honda's build quality is legendary. There are Honda dealers everywhere. You can't go wrong with a Honda. You meet nice people on them as well. So yeah, it's definitely a value for money bike. It's not one that I'm going to rush out and ride. Well, having said that, I probably will have a go, because I think it's going to be a very popular motorcycle. But it just doesn't do it for me. It says here, feast your eyes, but it doesn't do anything for my eyes. It hurts them. I may be in a minority here. I'll be interested, as ever, to hear your thoughts on the new CL500, if it's a bike that's on your radar. Certainly from a quality, ride, fit and finish, value for money point of view, it's top notch. Just doesn't work for me from a turning around and looking at it and thinking, whoa, point of view. Right, last story before we get on to parish notices and the camera overheats again. Just a quick one here. MCN always do these expert buying guides in the paper. I seldom talk about them, but I just want to mention this one. It says old school fours here, and in this particular paper, it's looking at some beefy 4-cylinder motorcycles. I just love this genre of bike, having recently ridden the Honda CB1100. If you haven't seen that, one of my what I call classic reviews, go back and check that out. I love that bike, but there are other bikes in that genre too, such things as the Yamaha XJR 1200, which I have ridden, beautiful bike, the Honda CB1300F, which I don't think I've ridden yet, Suzuki GSX-1400, which I haven't ridden yet. That's a bike that Del Boy's got at the moment, and he has said that I can ride his if I want to as well, so at some point I'll get to ride on a GSX-1400, I hope. Just amazing bikes in that genre, and you can pick them up between, it's saying here, sort of between $3.5 and $5.5 grand second hand. You don't have to buy the latest and greatest to have a lot of fun on a motorcycle. All right, that's it for the paper review. So as ever, as we finish off the video, let's have a little look at parish notices, what's coming up on the channel in the next few weeks. So on the 17th of May, sorry, I've skipped one. Next Saturday, this Saturday coming, will be my review of the Grom. You remember, or you may remember, that I'm sort of working my way through the Honda mini bikes at the moment. I've done the Dax, I've done the monkey bike, now it's the Grom, which is the sort of modern looking mini bike. Is that my favourite of them all? That's coming up on Saturday. On the 17th, I've got the next in my classic motorcycle series, and I'm going to be riding the mighty Suzuki GSX-R750. Some say the best sports bike ever built. So stay tuned if you're interested in the GSX-R750. I've got my final video coming on the 20th, which is my lessons learned on the Hunter, a bike that is set to be very popular again. Great value for money, great build quality. I think it looks good. A great bike from Royal Enfield. So my lessons learned on the Hunter on the 20th of May. 24th of May is my kind of Dax v Grom v Monkey summary video of all those three bikes. I had them all at the same time, so I get to ride them all back to back and sort of look at the pros and cons of all of them. Be interesting if you agree with my summaries there. I've got a biker scran coming up on the 27th of May. Haven't recorded that yet, don't quite know where I'm going. Actually, we're out recording it today, Wednesday, if you're watching this video as I post it. Myself, Jeff and Dan are planning to be out today filming the latest biker scran. You'll be able to see that on the 27th of May. Always enjoy doing those. And then the next bike news is currently scheduled for the 31st of May. My idea is to do bike news at the end of the month, covering the previous month. So I've got a bit out of sync because of being away and COVID and all that stuff. Sorry about that. They will get back in sync on the 31st of May. All right, so I look forward to speaking to you then. Until then, though, this has been the Mr. and Fly. Cheerio.